Hello everybody, my name is Ray. Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Today we are going to be diving into Christianity Today and how they are promoting what is a false gospel in connecting it to social justice. There is no connection between the two, but Christianity Today had a panel celebrating Black History Month that does try to connect the two, and in doing so does present a false gospel. And that's what we're going to be talking about. This is not a woke preacher clip. It is an Evangelical Dark Web original woke preacher clip, in that we're going to be diving into something that has not really been exposed enough. However, it's not really a surprise that Christianity Today is, compromised. I think every believer that has ever read their website probably has gotten that impression that this is an extremely compromised outlet. So with that said, this should not come off as a surprise, but we do got to make sure we know what the gospel is, so then when someone says what this guy's about to say, you can recognize that it is a false gospel, and that's what we're going to be talking about. That's why this is edifying to the church. So without further ado, let's roll tape.
So that's the first thing that kind of connected me to it. Secondly, I am the mission director of the Progressive National Baptist Convention, a great convention formed out of, unfortunately, a schism between the National Baptist USA Incorporated that created the Progressive National Baptist Convention. Dr. King was a part of it. Many of the John Lewis, many of the people that were at Bloody Sunday who were Baptists, and the preachers who were at the forefront of the civil rights movement were a part of the Progressive National Baptist Convention. And we rubbed shoulders with these people during the annual session. It's no big eyes, little U's. They're a part of us. We're a part of them. And so finally, and let me share this piece. So often people want to say that social justice is a force fit to the gospel. It is not, because when you go to Matthew chapter 22, somewhere around the 37th verse, when the question rose, what is the greatest commandment? Jesus said the greatest commandment is love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. But then he said the second is like unto it, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. And that is the crux. That's the cross that creates the vertical relationship, but you have to have a horizontal relationship, and we don't have time enough to really get into what the horizontal relationship entails. But the Jews had a concept of community. So when you understand that concept all through the Old Testament, in the New Testament, then you need to do what is necessary to make your community whole. And that's the other piece that attracted me to Bloody Sunday. And if you look at that interview, people talk about Dr. King and John Lewis, but the actual work behind that started 30 years before that, from people in that community that wanted to get voting rights.
Wow. So that is the clip. And again, it's from Christianity Today's cover story, their February cover story about Black History Month. This is a panel discussion, and it's content that they're putting out there for the general public. So you see what he described as the gospel, where, but what he really articulated poorly was the law. The law is summarized as love God and love your neighbor. That is a summary of the law. That is not a summary of the gospel. So he's trying to connect social justice not to the gospel like he said he was doing, but to the law, and it does not actually connect to the law. Because after all, if you want to understand, love your neighbor as yourself, you need to actually go to Leviticus chapter 19. Yes, it's that chapter in the Bible that comes after, the Bible condemns homosexuality in Leviticus 18. So after that chapter, we get the chapter that talks about love your neighbor as yourself. So, and it's half of a verse. And the other half of that verse talks about you shall not bear grudge. Or it's basically about not bearing grudges or seeking revenge. That's what the first half of that verse is about. And then you shall love your neighbor as yourself. So you have a negative command that's juxtaposed with a positive command, that is to love your neighbor as yourself. So if we want to understand what it means to love your neighbor as yourself, and certainly how this is a clear opportunity to dunk on social justice and the false social justice gospel, We look at that verse, and what social justice actually does is to correct injustice of the past with injustice in the present. That's social justice. Social justice is about basically using injustice to correct injustice, and that doesn't work. Social justice pretty much relies on a Marxist framework of oppressor and victim relationships. It relies on that mentality, and that you give the oppressor and victim. You pretty much give the victim extra privilege to compensate for their victim status. That is social justice by definition. On a practical, applied level. That's what it is. So reparations is a very good example of this, where you're trying to commit an injustice by stealing from pretty much everyone to give to supposed descendants of slaves, because, obviously this is a very poorly thought out solution or a plan. And those people did not actually suffer, but they're going to get money anyway. That is a clear example of social justice. It's a very obvious example and a very easy to articulate example, hopefully. So anyway, social justice is injustice pretty much in violation of the Old Testament commandment from which love your neighbor as yourself comes from. So that's a very key thing to point out when you want to argue about critical race theory and how it is systemically anti-biblical worldview, because it does not have a biblical concept of justice. It is an anti-biblical concept of social justice. And you see this guy, this clown here, he does not understand the gospel if he's conflating it with the law. The law, love your neighbor as yourself and loving God, is, the summary of what we fail to live up to and why we need the gospel. Because again, we were created, and when we were created, we had a perfect relationship with God. But we blew it. Adam blew it, and we inherited Adam's sin. So we need that second Adam, Jesus Christ, to pretty much give us a new life. And we need to have, his inheritance, not Adam's inheritance, in order to be reconciled with God. And from there, we can go back to a glorified body that does not have the capability of sinning. That is the end goal. That is the gospel. Loving God and loving your neighbor as yourself is not the gospel. It's great, but it's not the gospel. It's the law. It's good, but it's not the gospel. So we need to remember that, and these social justice people do not understand the gospel. That is why they are woke. So that's all I got to say about that. My name is Ray. This is the Evangelical Dark Web. For more cutting content like this, subscribe to the channel, and also check out evangelicaldarkweb.org. Linked in the description below. You definitely want to support, if you really like this channel, the Evangelical Dark Web. At very least, subscribe to the RSS feed, where you can get daily news updates, because I write articles nearly every day. And if you really like the content, you can support us in our Patreon-like system at evangelicaldarkweb.org/join. Also linked in the description below. Let me know what you think about what I think. Have a blessed day. I will catch you on the next one.